I was sitting on my back patio in Scottsdale, Arizona, enjoying the cool February evening with my propane patio heater glowing warmly beside me, when I heard the unmistakable sound of heels clicking aggressively across pavement. It was Sharon Hendricks, the HOA president, and she was power walking toward my house like a woman on a mission to ruin someone's day. That someone was clearly me. Oliver Carlson, she shrieked before she even reached my property line. I sighed and set down my beer, already knowing this wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. Sharon had been a thorn in my side since I moved into the Desert Vista community 6 months ago. She was one of those women who seemed to think that being HOA president gave her jurisdiction over every blade of grass, every paint color, and apparently every source of heat in the neighborhood. "Evening, Sharon," I called out, trying to keep my voice neutral. "What can I do for you?" She stopped at the edge of my patio, her perfectly manicured hand clutching her phone like it was a weapon. Sharon was in her late 40s, with that particular haircut that seemed to be standard issue for women who demanded to speak to managers. Her face was flushed, and I could see the vein in her forehead pulsing even in the dim light from my heater. "What can you do for me? What can you do for me?" she repeated, her voice climbing an octave with each word. "You can turn off that death trap immediately. Do you have any idea how dangerous those propane heaters are? You're going to burn down the entire neighborhood." I blinked at her, genuinely confused. "Sharon, it's a standard patio heater. Thousands of people use them. It's perfectly safe and completely legal." "I don't care if it's legal or not. It's a violation of our HOA regulations, Section 12, Subsection 4, which clearly states that no open flames are permitted on patios or in yards." I had actually read the HOA regulations when I moved in, specifically because I knew Sharon would be the type to weaponize them. "Sharon, that section refers to fire pits and bonfires. A propane heater isn't an open flame. It's enclosed, it has safety features, and it's designed for exactly this purpose." Her face turned an even deeper shade of red. "Are you arguing with me? I am the president of this HOA, and I am telling you that this is a violation. Turn it off now, or I'll have no choice but to take action." "What kind of action?" I asked, genuinely curious about where she thought she could take this. "I'm calling the police," she said triumphantly, already unlocking her phone. "This is a safety hazard, and I won't have you endangering everyone in this community with your reckless behavior." I almost laughed. "Sharon, the police aren't going to respond to a call about a patio heater. They have actual crimes to deal with." "We'll see about that," she snapped, and before I could say another word, she was dialing 911. I watched in disbelief as she actually went through with it. "Yes, hello. I need to report a dangerous situation. My neighbor is using an illegal propane heater that's creating a serious fire hazard. We need someone here immediately before someone gets hurt." The dispatcher on the other end must have asked for the address, because Sharon rattled off my street address with the kind of urgency usually reserved for reporting armed robberies. She stayed on the line for another minute, giving them additional details about the massive propane tank. It was a standard 20-pound tank, and the uncontrolled flames. The heater was functioning exactly as designed. When she hung up, she crossed her arms and gave me a satisfied smile. "An officer is on the way. I suggest you turn that thing off before they get here, or you might be looking at fines or worse." "Or worse?" I couldn't help but ask. "Sharon, I'm not running a meth lab. It's a patio heater." "We'll let the authorities decide that," she said primly. I decided there was no point in continuing the argument. If she wanted to waste police resources on this nonsense, that was on her. I grabbed my beer and took a long drink, keeping the heater running out of pure spite at this point. Sharon stayed right where she was, standing at the edge of my patio like a sentinel, occasionally glancing at her watch and then back toward the street. We waited in awkward silence for about 10 minutes. Sharon pulled out her phone and started typing furiously, probably updating the HOA Facebook group about her latest crusade against neighborhood safety violations. I could already imagine the post. Dealing with yet another irresponsible homeowner who refuses to follow basic safety protocols. Police have been called. Updates to follow. Finally, I saw the flash of red and blue lights reflecting off the houses across the street. Sharon straightened up, smoothing down her blouse and fixing her hair as if she were about to meet someone important. A patrol car pulled up to the curb in front of my house, and a single officer stepped out. Even in the dim light, I could see Sharon's expression falter slightly. The officer walking up my driveway was a tall, broad-shouldered man in his early 30s with a no-nonsense expression on his face. As he got closer, I noticed his nameplate read Martinez. "Evening, folks," Officer Martinez said, his voice calm and professional. "I got a call about a propane heater." Sharon immediately launched into her prepared speech. "Yes, officer, thank you so much for coming. This resident," she pointed at me dramatically, "is using an extremely dangerous propane heating device that violates our HOA regulations and poses a serious threat to the entire community. I've asked him repeatedly to turn it off, but he refuses to comply." Officer Martinez looked from Sharon to me, then to the heater sitting peacefully on my patio, radiating warmth. He walked closer, examining it carefully. I watched as something like recognition crossed his face, followed by what might have been amusement, though he kept his professional demeanor. "Madam," he said slowly, turning back to Sharon, "can you tell me specifically what the danger is here?" Sharon seemed taken aback that he wasn't immediately hauling me off to jail. "It's a propane heater. It could explode. It could start a fire. It's completely irresponsible to have something like that so close to residential properties." Officer Martinez nodded thoughtfully, then pulled out a small notepad. "And you're with the HOA, madam?" "I'm the president," Sharon said proudly. "I take the safety of this community very seriously, which is why I called you." "I see," Martinez said, making a note. He turned to me. "Sir, can I take a look at the heater more closely?" "Of course, officer," I said, standing up. "It's a standard Dina Glow propane patio heater. I bought it at Home Depot about 3 months ago." Martinez walked onto my patio and crouched down next to the heater, examining it thoroughly. He checked the connections, looked at the base, and even tested the stability of the unit. Sharon watched anxiously, clearly expecting him to find something wrong. After a full minute of inspection, Martinez stood up and turned to face both of us. There was definitely a hint of amusement in his eyes now. "Madam, I'm going to be straight with you. There's absolutely nothing illegal or dangerous about this heater. It's a standard patio heater that's being used exactly as intended." Sharon's mouth fell open. But it's propane. It could explode." "Madam, propane patio heaters are extremely common and perfectly legal. I actually use the exact same model on my own patio at home." He gestured to the heater. "Same brand, same size, everything. My wife and I use it at least 3 times a week during the winter months." The look on Sharon's face was priceless. Her expression cycled through disbelief, confusion, and then anger in rapid succession. "That can't be right. Are you telling me that the police use dangerous equipment in their own homes?" Martinez's professional demeanor cracked slightly, and I saw him suppress a smile. "Madam, it's not dangerous equipment. It's a patio heater. They're sold in every home improvement store in America. They have multiple safety features including an auto shutoff if they tip over, a pilot light safety system, and they're designed to be used in exactly this way. But the HOA regulations, Sharon started. Madam, HOA regulations don't supersede local, state, or federal law, and there are no laws against propane patio heaters. If your HOA has regulations about them, that's a civil matter between you and the homeowner. It's not a criminal issue, and it's definitely not an emergency that requires calling 911. Sharon's face was now approaching purple. So you're not going to do anything? There's nothing to do, Martinez said firmly. No laws are being broken. No one is in danger. This was not an appropriate use of emergency services. This is ridiculous, Sharon sputtered. I demand to speak to your supervisor. Martinez's expression hardened. Madam, you called 911 to report a non-emergency situation. That's actually a misuse of emergency services, which is something I could cite you for. I'm not going to do that tonight, but I need you to understand that 911 is for actual emergencies. Heart attacks, fires, crimes in progress, not HOA disputes about patio heaters. Are you threatening me? Sharon demanded. I'm educating you, Martinez replied calmly. If you have an issue with what this gentleman is doing and you believe it violates HOA policy, then you need to go through the proper HOA channels. Send him a letter, schedule a hearing, whatever your procedures are, but you cannot call 911 for things like this. Sharon looked like she wanted to argue more, but even she seemed to realize she was on thin ice. Fine, she said through gritted teeth. But this isn't over, Oliver. You'll be hearing from the HOA board. Looking forward to it, I said mildly. Sharon spun on her heel and stormed off toward her house, which was 3 doors down from mine. We watched her go in silence. Once she was out of earshot, Martinez turned to me with an apologetic expression. Sorry you had to deal with that, Mr. Carlson. Not your fault, I said. And thanks for setting her straight. Can I offer you a beer or anything? Least I can do for dragging you out here, Martinez chuckled. I appreciate the offer, but I'm on duty. And honestly, this was one of the more entertaining calls I've had this week. He glanced back at the heater. Seriously, though, those things are great. My wife was skeptical when I bought ours, but now she's out on the patio more than I am. They're lifesavers during the winter evenings, I agreed. Gets cold here once the sun goes down. No kidding, Martinez said. He handed me a card. Listen, if she harasses you about this again, or if she tries to claim there's some kind of safety violation, feel free to give me a call. I'll be happy to explain the law to her again. I took the card gratefully. Thanks, Officer Martinez. I really appreciate it. Just Martinez is fine when I'm not writing tickets, he said with a grin. And hey, good luck with your HOA. Sounds like you're going to need it. After Martinez left, I settled back into my chair and enjoyed the rest of my evening in peace. The heater continued to work perfectly, warming my patio and apparently not exploding or burning down the neighborhood. I could see lights on at Sharon's house and imagined her inside, furiously typing up incident reports or whatever HOA presidents did when their power trips got shut down by reality. I should have known that wouldn't be the end of it. The next morning, I woke up to find a notice taped to my front door. It was printed on official HOA letterhead and was titled Violation Notice in bold red letters. I read it while sipping my coffee. Dear Mr. Carlson, it has come to the attention of the Desert Vista Community HOA Board that you are operating unauthorized heating equipment on your property. Section 12. Subsection 4 of our community regulations states that no open flames or fire-producing equipment shall be operated on patios, decks, or yards. This includes but is not limited to fire pits, chimeneas, and propane heaters. You are required to cease use of this equipment immediately and remove it from your property within 72 hours. Failure to comply will result in daily fines of $100 until the violation is corrected. You have the right to appeal this decision at the next HOA board meeting, scheduled for March 15th at 7 p.m. in the community center. Sincerely, Sharon Hendricks, HOA President. I read the notice 3 times, getting more annoyed with each pass. The date on the letter was today, meaning Sharon had printed this up first thing in the morning. The woman was nothing if not persistent. I pulled up the HOA regulations on my phone and found Section 12, subsection 4. Just as I remembered, it read, "No open fires, fire pits, or bonfires shall be maintained on any lot. This includes but is not limited to wood-burning fire pits, chimeneas, and similar devices." There was no mention of propane heaters. Sharon had added that part herself. I took a photo of the notice and the relevant section of the regulations, then called my real estate attorney, David Chen. David had helped me with the purchase of the house, and I'd kept his number specifically for situations like this. "Oliver, good to hear from you," David answered. "What's going on?" I explained the situation, from Sharon's 911 call to the violation notice I'd received this morning. David listened without interrupting, and I could hear him typing notes. "Okay," he said when I finished. "First thing, you're absolutely right that propane heaters aren't covered under that regulation. She's interpreting it however she wants, which she doesn't have the authority to do. Second, she can't just unilaterally fine you. The HOA board has to vote on violations and fines. So what do I do?" I asked. "Send her a written response. Keep it professional but firm. Cite the exact language of the regulation and point out that your heater isn't included. Reference the police visit and Officer Martinez's assessment. Tell her you're not removing the heater and that you're not paying any fines. Then show up to that board meeting in March prepared to defend your position." "Will that be enough?" I asked. "Probably not," David admitted. "People like Sharon don't back down easily, but it establishes your position clearly. If she tries to actually enforce these made-up fines, we can fight it. HOAs have to follow their own rules, and she's not doing that." I thanked David and spent the next hour crafting a response letter. I kept it factual and professional, even though I wanted to tell Sharon exactly where she could stick her violation notice. I printed 2 copies, kept one for my records, and walked down to Sharon's house to deliver the other. Sharon answered the door in a designer workout outfit that probably cost more than my monthly utilities. Her expression soured immediately when she saw me. "I'm delivering my formal response to your violation notice," I said, holding out the envelope. She snatched it from my hand without a word and started to close the door. "Sharon, wait," I said. "Look, I don't want to be at war with the HOA. I'm not trying to cause problems. I just want to use a standard patio heater that's completely legal and safe." "You want to do whatever you want without regard for community standards," she shot back. "That's the problem with people like you. You move into an HOA community and then want to ignore all the rules." "I'm not ignoring the rules," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm following them exactly as they're written. You're the one trying to add rules that don't exist." "We'll see what the board has to say about that," Sharon said coldly. "And just so you know, I've already spoken to 3 other board members this morning. They all agree with me that propane heaters are a safety hazard and need to be banned. Then they can vote to change the regulations at a properly noticed meeting where homeowners have a chance to weigh in," I said. "But you can't enforce rules that don't exist yet." Sharon's eyes narrowed. "The board meeting isn't until March 15th. That's 3 weeks away. The fines start tomorrow." "No, they don't," I said firmly. And if you try to impose them, I'll fight them. I've already talked to my attorney." "Of course you have," she said with disgust. "You're one of those people who lawyers up at the first sign of having to be a responsible neighbor." "I'm one of those people who doesn't let bullies push them around," I corrected. "Read my letter. Everything in there is factual and documented. I'm not doing anything wrong and you know it." I turned and walked away before she could respond. My heart was pounding with frustration and anger. I'd moved to Desert Vista because it seemed like a nice, quiet community. The houses were well maintained, the neighborhood was safe, and the location was perfect for my commute to my job as a software engineer in Phoenix. I hadn't signed up for a battle with an overzealous HOA president who seemed to have nothing better to do than harass her neighbors. Over the next few days, I noticed Sharon driving by my house multiple times. She'd slow down, crane her neck to see if the heater was on my patio, and then speed up once she confirmed it was still there. It was creepy and more than a little obsessive. On the third day, I came home from work to find another notice on my door. This one informed me that I was being fined $100 for the first day of non-compliance, and that the fine would continue to accrue daily until I removed the unauthorized equipment. I photographed the notice and emailed it to David. His response came within an hour. "Don't pay it. This is completely unenforceable. Keep documenting everything." That evening, I was sitting on my patio again, heater running, when my next-door neighbor, Frank Morrison, came over. Frank was a retired accountant in his 60s who'd lived in Desert Vista for over a decade. "Evening, Oliver," he called out as he approached. "Mind if I join you for a minute?" "Not at all," I said, gesturing to the empty chair. "Want a beer?" "Don't mind if I do," Frank said, settling into the chair with a grateful sigh. "These old bones appreciate a little warmth on nights like this." I grabbed him a beer from my cooler, and we sat in comfortable silence for a moment. "I heard about your trouble with Sharon," Frank finally said. "Well, the whole neighborhood's heard about it. She's been posting about it on the HOA Facebook page." "Of course she has," I muttered. "What's she saying?" "Oh, the usual. That you're a reckless homeowner who doesn't care about safety, that you're defying the HOA board, that you're setting a dangerous precedent. She's really playing it up." "Frank, do you have any opinion on this? I mean, you've been here a lot longer than I have. Is there any legitimate reason I shouldn't use a propane heater?" Frank took a long drink of his beer and shook his head. "Not that I can think of. Hell, Tom and Patricia Wilkins, 2 streets over, have had one for years. Sharon's never said a word to them about it." That caught my attention. "Really? They have the same kind of heater?" "Similar, yeah. They use it all the time during the winter. I've been to their place for barbecues where that thing was running all evening. Sharon was at one of those barbecues, actually." "So she knows propane heaters are being used in the community, and she's never had a problem with it before." "Not until you," Frank confirmed. "And I'll tell you what I think is really going on. Sharon doesn't like you because you called her out at the last community meeting." I thought back to the meeting in January. There had been a discussion about increasing HOA dues by 20%, and Sharon had been pushing hard for it. I'd asked detailed questions about where the money was going, and whether we'd solicited competing bids for the landscaping services we were using. Sharon had gotten defensive and snippy, and several other homeowners had backed up my questions. The dues increase had been tabled pending a more detailed financial review. "You think this is payback for that?" I asked. "I think Sharon doesn't like being questioned," Frank said. "And I think she especially doesn't like being questioned by new homeowners who she hasn't had a chance to intimidate yet. You embarrassed her at that meeting, and this is her way of reasserting control." "That's insane," I said. "This is about propane heaters, not some petty power struggle." "Welcome to HOA politics," Frank said dryly, "where everything is a power struggle and the pettier the better." We talked for a while longer, and Frank confirmed that several other homeowners were getting tired of Sharon's antics. He promised to speak up at the March board meeting and encouraged me to reach out to some of the other neighbors who might be willing to support me. The next 2 weeks were an exercise in patience. Sharon continued to post about my violations on the HOA Facebook page. She sent me daily fine notices. She even started taking photos of my patio from the street and posting them online with dramatic captions about safety hazards and irresponsible neighbors. I documented everything. Every notice, every social media post, every time she drove by my house to spy on me. David assured me that we were building a solid case if things escalated to legal action. I also reached out to some of my neighbors. Frank introduced me to several longtime residents who were fed up with Sharon's authoritarian approach to running the HOA. Tom and Patricia Wilkins confirmed that they'd been using their propane heater for 3 years without any issues. They even came over to look at mine and verify it was basically identical to theirs. "Sharon's never said a word to us about ours," Patricia said, shaking her head. "This is absolutely about her not liking you, not about the heater." As the board meeting approached, I prepared my presentation. I printed copies of the HOA regulations with the relevant sections highlighted. I compiled photos of propane heaters being used at other properties in the community, including the Wilkins house. I had Officer Martinez's card and a written statement he'd agreed to provide about the safety and legality of patio heaters. I even pulled up the product safety information from Dina Glow's website showing all the safety features and certifications. The night before the meeting, David called me with some additional advice. "Remember, stay calm and professional. Don't let Sharon bait you into an argument. Present your facts, answer questions clearly, and let the evidence speak for itself. The other board members aren't stupid. They'll see what's going on." "What if they side with her anyway?" I asked. "Then we escalate, but I don't think it'll come to that." HOA boards generally don't like making decisions that are clearly unsupportable. It opens them up to liability. The community center was packed when I arrived on March 15th. Apparently word had gotten around that there was going to be some drama, and people had turned out to watch. I recognized most of the faces from around the neighborhood, including Frank, Tom, and Patricia, and several others who'd expressed support for me. Sharon was already seated at the front table with the other 4 board members. There was Richard Torres, a real estate agent in his 50s who served as vice president. Next to him was Michelle Sanders, the secretary, a middle-aged woman who owned a local boutique. Then there was Gary Chen, the treasurer, a serious-looking man in his 40s who worked in finance. The last member was Jennifer Palmer, a young attorney in her early 30s who'd recently joined the board. Sharon called the meeting to order with a sharp rap of her gavel. They went through the standard business first, approving the minutes from the last meeting and reviewing the financial report. I noticed Sharon kept glancing at me during all of this, her expression smug. Finally, we reached the agenda item about violations and fines. "We have one matter to address this evening," Sharon announced. "A violation regarding the use of unauthorized and dangerous equipment by a resident at 4523 Desert Bloom Drive." "That would be me," I said, standing up. "Oliver Carlson." "Yes, Mr. Carlson," Sharon said with false sweetness. "You've been notified multiple times about the propane heater you're operating on your property in violation of our community regulations. You've also been assessed daily fines for non-compliance. The board needs to decide how to proceed with this matter." "I'd like to address the board," I said. Sharon looked like she wanted to refuse, but Richard spoke up. "Of course, Mr. Carlson. Please, come forward." I walked to the front of the room and handed out the packets I'd prepared to each board member. "I've compiled information that I think is relevant to this situation. First, I want to be clear that I'm not violating any HOA regulations. Section 12, subsection 4, which Sharon cited in her violation notice, prohibits open fires, fire pits, and bonfires. It does not mention propane heaters. Because propane heaters are inherently understood to be included in fire-producing equipment," Sharon interrupted. "Sharon, let him finish," Jennifer Palmer said quietly. She was flipping through the packet I'd provided, her expression thoughtful. "Thank you," I said. "As you can see in the documentation, propane patio heaters are not fire-producing equipment in the traditional sense. They're enclosed heating systems with multiple safety features. They're sold in every major retailer and are legal in all 50 states for residential use. I've included the safety specifications from the manufacturer." "That doesn't matter," Sharon said. "They're still dangerous. Actually, when the police responded to Sharon's 911 call about my heater," I paused as several board members' heads snapped up. Clearly, Sharon hadn't told them that part. "Officer Martinez confirmed that there's nothing dangerous or illegal about these heaters. In fact, he uses the exact same model at his own home. I have a written statement from him in your packet." Gary Chen was reading the statement, his eyebrows raised. "Sharon, you called the police about this." "It was a safety emergency," Sharon said defensively. "Or at least it could have been." "The officer disagreed," I continued. He also reminded Sharon that 911 is for actual emergencies, not HOA disputes. "But more importantly, I want to point out that other residents in this community have been using propane heaters for years without any issues. Tom and Patricia Wilkins, for example, have had one for 3 years. Sharon has never cited them for a violation." "That's because I didn't know about it," Sharon snapped. "You were at a barbecue at their house where it was being used," I said flatly. "You saw it. You stood next to it. You said nothing." The room erupted in murmurs. Patricia stood up from her seat in the audience. "That's true. Sharon was at our 4th of July barbecue last year. She commented on how nice it was to have the heater running because it got chilly after sunset." Sharon's face was bright red. "I don't remember that." "Well, I do," Patricia said firmly. "And I have photos from that party that show the heater in the background." Richard cleared his throat. "Mr. Carlson, you said you've been assessed fines. How much are we talking about?" "Sharon sent me notices for $100 per day for 11 days, I said. "That's $1,100 in total. I haven't paid any of it because the fines are based on a violation that doesn't exist." Michelle Sanders spoke up for the first time. "Sharon, did the board vote to approve these fines?" "I didn't think that was necessary," Sharon said stiffly. "I'm the president. I have the authority to enforce violations." "Not without board approval, you don't," Gary said, frowning. "That's in our bylaws." Jennifer Palmer was making notes. "I have to agree with Mr. Carlson that the regulation he's being cited for doesn't appear to cover propane heaters. The language is very specific about open fires and fire pits. If we want to regulate propane heaters, we need to amend the regulations through the proper process." "Exactly," I said. "And that process requires notice to all homeowners and the opportunity for input. You can't just retroactively create rules and enforce them." Sharon was looking increasingly cornered. "The spirit of the regulation clearly encompasses all fire-producing equipment." "The spirit doesn't matter," Jennifer said firmly. "The actual language matters. That's basic contract law, which is what HOA regulations are. If the language doesn't cover something, we can't enforce it as if it does." Richard looked around at the other board members. I think we need to vote on this. I move that we rescind the violation notice issued to Mr. Carlson and void all associated fines. I second, Gary said immediately. We need to discuss this further, Sharon protested. We've discussed enough, Richard said. All in favor of rescinding the violation and voiding the fines. 4 hands went up, Richard, Michelle, Gary, and Jennifer. Sharon sat with her arms crossed, her face like thunder. Motion passes, Richard said. Mr. Carlson, the violation notice is rescinded and you don't owe any fines. We apologize for the confusion. Thank you, I said, relief flooding through me. However, Jennifer added, I think we should consider whether we want to add propane heaters to our regulations going forward. That should be a separate discussion with proper notice to all homeowners. Agreed, Richard said. We'll put it on the agenda for next month and send out notice to everyone. Sharon looked like she wanted to argue more, but even she could see that she'd lost. The meeting moved on to other business, but I barely paid attention. I'd won. The violation was gone, the fines were voided, and it was clear that at least 4 out of 5 board members weren't going to back up Sharon's overreach. After the meeting ended, several neighbors came up to congratulate me and thank me for standing up to Sharon. Frank clapped me on the shoulder. Well done, son. About time someone put her in her place. Tom Wilkins shook my hand. If they try to ban heaters next month, Patricia and I will be here to oppose it. Hell, half the neighborhood will. As I was leaving, Jennifer Palmer caught up with me in the parking lot. Mr. Carlson, can I talk to you for a minute? Of course, I said. I want to apologize for what happened, she said. I'm the newest member of the board and I'm still figuring out the dynamics, but it's pretty clear that Sharon targeted you unfairly. That's not how the HOA should operate. I appreciate that, I said, and I appreciate you and the others voting to rescind the violation. It was the right call legally and ethically, Jennifer said. Between you and me, there have been other situations where Sharon has overstepped her authority. This was just the most blatant. Some of us on the board are considering whether it's time for new leadership. That's above my pay grade, I said diplomatically. I just want to live in my house peacefully and maybe warm up my patio on cold evenings. Jennifer smiled. Well, you should be able to do that without harassment now. But if Sharon causes you any more trouble, please let me or one of the other board members know directly. We'll shut it down. I thanked her and drove home feeling like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The heater was still on my patio where I'd left it, and I turned it on and enjoyed the rest of the evening without any interruptions or surprise visits from angry HOA presidents. The next morning, I woke up to find that Sharon had posted a long, rambling message on the HOA Facebook page about how the board had made a dangerous decision, and that homeowners should be prepared for the consequences when someone's property burned down due to propane heaters. The comments section was brutal. Multiple people called her out for wasting police resources, for selective enforcement, and for abusing her authority. Several people suggested it was time for her to step down as president. Sharon deleted the post within a few hours, but the damage was done. Screenshots had been shared, and the community had seen exactly who Sharon was when she didn't get her way. Over the next few weeks, things were quiet. Sharon stopped driving by my house. She stopped posting about me online. I used my heater whenever I wanted without any issues. The April board meeting came and went, and the proposal to add propane heaters to the prohibited items list was voted down 4-1, with only Sharon in favor. Then, about a month after the original board meeting, something interesting happened. I came home from work to find Officer Martinez's patrol car parked in front of my house. For a moment, my heart sank, worried that Sharon had escalated things somehow. But Martinez was just standing on the sidewalk, looking at my house with a smile. "Mr. Carlson," he called out when he saw me. "Got a minute?" "Of course," I said, walking over. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," Martinez assured me. "I'm actually off duty in about 20 minutes and I happen to be in the neighborhood. I wanted to follow up on that call I responded to back in February." "About the heater?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, grinning. "I heard through the grapevine that the HOA president tried to fine you anyway after I told her it was legal, and that you had to go to a board meeting to fight it." "News travels fast," I said. "Small community," Martinez said. "And my cousin lives 3 streets over. She was at that meeting. She said you handled yourself well." "Thanks," I said. "The board voted in my favor, so it worked out." "Good," Martinez said. "Listen, the reason I stopped by is that I talked to my sergeant about that 911 call. Misuse of emergency services is something we take seriously, especially when it's someone in a position of authority who should know better." "You're not going to cite Sharon, are you?" I asked. I didn't particularly like the woman, but I didn't want to cause her legal trouble either. "Not for that call, no," Martinez said. "But we did send her a formal warning letter explaining proper use of 911 and the potential consequences for future misuse. And we've flagged her address in our system so that if she calls again with something frivolous, we'll be aware of the pattern." "I appreciate that," I said. "Between you and me," Martinez added, "people like her make our jobs harder. We have limited resources, and when we're responding to fake emergencies about patio heaters, we're not available for actual emergencies." She needed to understand that. We talked for a few more minutes, and Martinez asked me how I liked the heater. I told him it had been great and thanked him again for backing me up. After he left, I felt even better about the whole situation. Not only had I won the fight with the HOA, but Sharon had faced some actual consequences for her behavior. The summer passed peacefully. I didn't use the heater much during the hot months, obviously, but I kept it on my patio as a matter of principle. Sharon mostly stayed away from me. We'd occasionally cross paths at community events, and she'd give me cold looks, but she never approached me or tried to start another fight. In August, there was an HOA election for board positions. Richard, Michelle, and Gary all ran for re-election and won easily. Sharon ran for re-election as president, and she lost. Jennifer Palmer was elected as the new president by a wide margin. Sharon was voted off the board entirely. Frank told me later that Sharon had shown up to the meeting where the results were announced, given a short speech about how the community was making a mistake, and then left. She stopped participating in HOA activities entirely after that. The new board under Jennifer's leadership was much more reasonable. They focused on actual community issues like maintaining common areas, organizing social events, and ensuring the neighborhood was well kept. They didn't spend their time harassing homeowners over imaginary violations. As fall approached and the evenings got cooler again, I started using my heater regularly. One Saturday evening in October, I was sitting on my patio with a few friends, the heater glowing warmly, when I noticed Tom and Patricia walking by with their own heater loaded on a dolly. "What's going on?" I called out. "We're taking our heater to the community center," Patricia explained. "Jennifer asked if anyone had one for the Halloween party tomorrow night. Apparently yours gave her the idea that we could do an outdoor seating area for the adults while the kids do their trick-or-treating route." "That's a great idea," I said. "Want me to bring mine too, would you?" Patricia asked. "That would be perfect. We're setting up on the patio behind the community center." The next evening, I loaded my heater into my truck and drove it over to the community center. The Halloween party was a big success. The kids loved the decorated trick or treat trail that the activities committee had set up, and the adults appreciated having a warm, comfortable place to hang out. My heater and the Wilkins heater kept everyone comfortable as the temperature dropped after sunset. Jennifer came over at one point to thank me. This was a great addition to the party. I can't believe we never thought of it before. Well, it was a controversial topic for a while, I said with a smile. Jennifer laughed. That's one way to put it. You know, that whole situation with Sharon was actually eye-opening for a lot of us. We realized how much the HOA had become about control instead of community. We're trying to change that. I've noticed, I said, and I appreciate it. This is what an HOA should be, bringing people together, making the neighborhood better, not harassing people over nothing. Agreed, Jennifer said. And for what it's worth, I'm glad you stood your ground. It set a good precedent. As I stood there, warm from the heater and surrounded by my neighbors enjoying themselves, I reflected on the whole crazy situation. What had started as a simple dispute over a patio heater had turned into a months-long battle with an overzealous HOA president. But in the end, it had also brought positive change to the community and helped establish reasonable boundaries for HOA authority. I thought about Sharon, living 3 doors down, probably stewing in her house about how the community had rejected her leadership. Part of me felt a little bad for her. She'd clearly tied up her entire identity in being HOA president, and losing that position must have been hard. But mostly, I just felt relieved that the drama was over. The following week, something unexpected happened that put a final cap on the whole situation. I was at work when I got a call from an unknown number with a Scottsdale area code. "Is this Oliver Carlson?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, this is Oliver. Who's calling?" "Mr. Carlson, this is Detective Sarah Walsh with the Scottsdale Police Department. I need to ask you some questions about Sharon Hendricks. Do you have a few minutes?" My stomach dropped. "Is everything okay? Did something happen to Sharon?" "No, Madam Hendricks is fine," Detective Walsh said. "But we're investigating some irregularities with the Desert Vista HOA finances, and your name came up as someone who had concerns about the HOA's operations." "Irregularities?" I asked. "What kind of irregularities?" "I can't go into details yet," Walsh said. "But I understand you questioned some financial matters at an HOA meeting back in January. Can you tell me about that?" I explained how I'd asked about the proposed dues increase and requested detailed financial information about where the money was going. I wanted to see competing bids for the landscaping services and understand why we needed such a large increase. Sharon got defensive about it, and the board tabled the discussion pending a financial review. "Did that financial review ever happen?" Walsh asked. "I'm not sure," I admitted. There was new board leadership elected in August, and they've been more transparent about finances. But I don't know if they ever completed a formal review of what happened before. "I see," Walsh said, making notes. "Mr. Carlson, have you noticed anything else unusual about HOA operations? Any unexplained expenses or questionable decisions?" I thought about it. "Nothing specific that I can point to, but Sharon did seem to have expensive tastes. The community center got some upgrades last year that seemed excessive for what we needed. New furniture, a fancy coffee machine, that kind of thing." "Thank you," Walsh said. "That's helpful. If you think of anything else, please give me a call." She gave me her direct number and thanked me for my time. After we hung up, I immediately called Jennifer Palmer. "Jennifer, I just got a call from the police about HOA finances. What's going on?" Jennifer sighed deeply. "I was going to call you this afternoon. When Gary and I did a thorough review of the HOA accounts after the election, we found some serious discrepancies. Money that should have been in our reserves wasn't there. Invoices that didn't match up with actual work done. It looks like Sharon may have been embezzling from the HOA. You're kidding, I said, even though it was starting to make a horrible kind of sense. I wish I was, Jennifer said. We found about $40,000 in questionable expenses over the past 3 years. Things like invoices from vendors that don't exist, reimbursements to Sharon for expenses that were never approved, that kind of thing. Gary and I reported it to the police last week. $40,000. I repeated, stunned. How did no one notice? Sharon was the one who prepared all the financial reports for the board, Jennifer explained. And apparently, the previous board members just rubber-stamped whatever she put in front of them without asking questions. You were the first person in years to actually challenge the financials. Is that why she came after me so hard about the heater? I asked. She was worried I'd dig deeper into the finances. We think that was part of it, Jennifer confirmed. She wanted to discredit you and make you look like a troublemaker, so that if you raised financial concerns again, the board wouldn't take you seriously. That's insane, I said. That's criminal, Jennifer corrected. The police are building a case. They've subpoenaed all of our financial records and Sharon's personal bank accounts. Detective Walsh said it could take a few months to put everything together, but they're confident they have enough for charges. Over the next few weeks, the investigation became the talk of the neighborhood. The police interviewed multiple board members and homeowners. They seized documents from the community center. Sharon hired a lawyer and stopped talking to anyone in the neighborhood. In December, Sharon Hendricks was formally charged with embezzlement, theft, and fraud. The charges detailed how she'd systematically stolen from the HOA over a 3-year period, using fake invoices, inflated expense reports, and unauthorized withdrawals from HOA accounts. The total amount was $43,000. The case made the local news. There were articles in the Scottsdale newspaper about HOA board oversight and the importance of financial transparency. Desert Vista became a cautionary tale about what happens when board members aren't held accountable. I was interviewed by a reporter from the paper who wanted to know about my experience challenging Sharon. I just asked some basic questions about where our money was going, I told him. Every homeowner should do that. These are our dues. We have a right to know how they're being spent. The article ran with the headline, HOA Oversight. One homeowner's questions uncovered massive fraud. It was a bit dramatic, but not inaccurate. Sharon's trial was scheduled for the following April. In the meantime, she was released on bond with conditions that she not contact any Desert Vista residents or participate in any HOA activities. She put her house up for sale in January. The new board, under Jennifer's leadership, worked with a lawyer to try to recover the stolen funds. They also implemented new financial controls, including requiring 2 board members to approve all expenditures over $500 and bringing in an independent accountant to review the books quarterly. On a cold evening in January, almost a year after Sharon had first called the police on my heater, I was sitting on my patio with the heater running. Officer Martinez, who I'd stayed in touch with occasionally, stopped by. He was off duty and had brought his wife, Maria, who wanted to see the heater that had caused so much drama. "This is it?" Maria asked, looking at the heater with amusement. "This is what that crazy woman called 911 about." "That's it," I confirmed. "Pretty anticlimactic, right?" Martinez laughed. "You know, when I got that call, I thought it was going to be some huge industrial thing or someone doing something genuinely stupid. Then I get there, and it's just a regular patio heater identical to mine. I couldn't believe she'd called 911 over it." "She was trying to intimidate me," I said. She figured if a cop showed up, I'd be scared and get rid of it. Instead, it backfired completely, Maria said. And then the financial investigation happened. Do you think she would have gotten away with it if you hadn't asked those questions at the meeting? Probably, I admitted. At least for a while longer. The previous board wasn't paying attention. Someone had to ask questions eventually. Well, I'm glad it was you, Martinez said. People like Sharon Hendricks think they can bully their way through life and take whatever they want. It's good when they face consequences. We sat and talked for a while longer, and Martinez told me that Sharon's case was actually a good one for the department. It would likely result in stronger regulations about HOA oversight and give police a template for investigating similar cases in other communities. There are probably dozens of HOA boards out there where someone is doing the same thing Sharon did, Martinez said. Most people just don't notice or don't ask questions. Your case is going to make it easier to catch them. As winter turned to spring, the heater became less necessary, but I kept it on my patio. It had become a symbol of sorts, a reminder that standing up for yourself matters, and that rules and regulations should be applied fairly and reasonably. In April, Sharon pled guilty to multiple counts of theft and fraud. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison, ordered to pay full restitution of $43,000 plus interest, and given 5 years of probation after her release. She also had to complete community service and was permanently banned from serving on any HOA board in Arizona. The neighborhood held a community meeting after the sentencing to discuss what we'd learned and how to prevent it from happening again. Jennifer led the meeting, and she was clear that everyone shared some responsibility for what had happened. Sharon was able to do what she did because we weren't paying attention, Jennifer said. We trusted her to handle things and we didn't ask questions. Going forward, we all need to be more engaged, attend meetings, review financial reports, ask questions when things don't make sense. This is our community, and we all have a responsibility to protect it. People nodded in agreement. Frank Morrison stood up and said, I've lived here for 12 years, and I never once looked at a financial report until this year. That's on me. Sharon was wrong to steal, but we were wrong to make it so easy for her. The meeting was productive and honest. We talked about implementing new safeguards, increasing transparency, and making sure board members were accountable to homeowners. It felt like the community was finally coming together in a meaningful way. As I drove home that night, I thought about the whole crazy journey. It had started with such a small thing, a patio heater, just a simple device to keep warm on cool evenings. But Sharon's irrational response to it had set off a chain of events that exposed financial fraud, led to criminal charges, resulted in prison time, and ultimately changed how our entire community operated. I pulled into my driveway and looked up at my house. It was a nice house in a nice neighborhood. I'd fought to live here on my own terms, without harassment or unreasonable restrictions. And in doing that, I'd accidentally helped clean up corruption and make the community better for everyone. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Thanks for coming to the meeting tonight, and thanks for asking those questions last January. You changed this community for the better, I replied. Just wanted to use my heater in peace. Everything else was a bonus. She sent back a laughing emoji and added, well, mission accomplished. Enjoy your heater without any more drama. I looked at the heater sitting on my patio, exactly where I'd always kept it. Tomorrow evening it might still be cool enough to use it, or maybe not. Either way, I knew I could use it whenever I wanted without worry. No more HOA violations. No more harassment. No more Sharon calling 911 over nothing. Just a guy, his house, and a perfectly legal propane patio heater. The next few months were remarkably peaceful. The new HOA board continued to do excellent work, focusing on real community issues rather than manufactured problems. We had regular financial reports that were clear and detailed. Board meetings were well attended because people actually felt like their input mattered. Several new committees were formed to handle different aspects of community life, and volunteers were eager to participate. In June, Tom and Patricia Wilkins invited me over for a barbecue. It was a warm evening, so we didn't need the heaters, but Tom had set his out on the patio anyway. "It's become a conversation piece," he explained with a grin. "Everyone who comes over wants to hear the story about how Sharon tried to ban them and ended up going to prison." "I don't think the heater is why she went to prison," I said, laughing. "No, but it's part of the story," Patricia said. "If she hadn't been so obsessed with getting rid of your heater, she might have kept flying under the radar with the embezzlement. Her need to control everything is what brought her down." "Pride comes before a fall," Tom added. "Sharon thought she was untouchable. She thought she could do whatever she wanted because no one would challenge her. You proved her wrong." Later that evening, as I was helping clean up, Jennifer Palmer stopped by. She'd been invited to the barbecue too, and we ended up talking about how different the community felt now. "You know what I've noticed," Jennifer said. "People actually like living here now. Before, there was always this undercurrent of tension. Everyone was worried about getting a violation notice or being called out at a meeting for some minor thing. Now people feel like they can actually enjoy their homes." "That's what it should have been all along," I said. "HOAs are supposed to maintain property values and handle shared spaces, not micromanage everyone's lives." "Exactly," Jennifer agreed, "and I think we've finally found that balance. We're enforcing the important rules, the ones that actually matter, and letting go of the petty stuff." As summer progressed, the community continued to thrive. The landscaping looked great because the board had actually solicited competitive bids and hired a better service for less money than Sharon had been paying her mysterious vendor. The community pool was well maintained and became a hub of activity. Social events were well attended and fun. In August, there was a community-wide garage sale. I set up in my driveway with some items I'd been meaning to get rid of, and I was surprised by how many neighbors stopped by just to chat. People I'd never really talked to before introduced themselves and thanked me for standing up to Sharon. "You're the heater guy," one neighbor, David, said with a smile. "My wife and I were following that whole drama on Facebook. It was better than reality TV." "I'm glad I could provide entertainment," I said dryly. "No, seriously," David said. "You did something most people wouldn't do. You stood up for yourself even when someone in authority was trying to bully you. That takes guts." As he walked away, I thought about what he'd said. I hadn't thought of myself as particularly brave. I'd just been annoyed at being told I couldn't use a perfectly legal heater on my own property. But I suppose there was something to be said for not backing down when you know you're right. In September, the community celebrated its 15th anniversary with a big party at the community center. There was food, music, and activities for kids. And yes, there were several propane heaters set up around the outdoor area for when the evening got cool. I was standing near one of the heaters, talking to Frank Morrison, when Officer Martinez showed up with his family. He'd been invited as a thank you for his service to the community. "I heard about Sharon's sentencing," Martinez said when he came over. 3 years seems about right for what she did." "It does," I agreed. "And the restitution order means the HOA should eventually get most of the money back." "That's good," Martinez said. "And I heard the community has made a lot of positive changes since she left." "It's night and day," Frank interjected. "Best the neighborhood's been in years." Martinez gestured to my heater. "And you're still using the famous heater, I see." "Every chance I get," I said with a smile. "It's kept me warm through some cold nights and apparently helped expose financial fraud. Best $300 I ever spent." We all laughed at that. Martinez's kids ran up wanting him to come play games with them, and he excused himself with a wave. As the party wound down and the sun set, the heaters kicked into action, keeping everyone comfortable. I looked around at my neighbors, all talking and laughing and enjoying themselves. This was what community was supposed to be. Not fear and intimidation and petty power struggles, but people coming together to make a neighborhood a good place to live. In October, I got an invitation to speak at a statewide HOA conference in Phoenix. Apparently, word had spread about what happened in Desert Vista, and the conference organizers wanted me to talk about homeowner advocacy and financial oversight. I wasn't sure at first, but David Chen, my attorney, encouraged me to do it. "You've got an important story to tell," he said. "And there are a lot of homeowners out there dealing with similar situations who could benefit from hearing it." So I found myself on a panel titled "Homeowner Rights and HOA Accountability" in front of about 200 people at a hotel conference center. I told the story of the propane heater, Sharon's overreach, the investigation, and everything that followed. I emphasized the importance of reading your HOA documents, asking questions, documenting everything, and not being afraid to push back when the HOA is wrong. During the Q&A session, a woman raised her hand. "What would you say to someone who's afraid to challenge their HOA because they don't want to make waves?" I thought about it for a moment. I'd say that sometimes making waves is necessary. If you're not doing anything wrong and the HOA is overstepping its authority, then you have every right to stand up for yourself. And more often than not, you'll find that other homeowners support you. Sharon had been bullying people in my neighborhood for years, but no one said anything because they didn't want to be targeted. Once one person stands up, others will too. Another man asked, "What if you challenge the HOA and they retaliate? Document everything," I said firmly. "Every notice, every fine, every interaction. Keep emails, take photos, make notes. If they're retaliating against you for exercising your rights, that's something you can fight legally. And if it gets bad enough, talk to a lawyer. Most real estate attorneys have experience with HOA disputes." After the panel, several people came up to thank me and share their own HOA horror stories. It was eye-opening to hear how common these problems were. Overzealous board members, questionable finances, selective enforcement of rules, these issues were everywhere. One woman told me she'd been fighting her HOA for 6 months over the color she'd painted her front door. They approved the paint sample, I have it in writing, and then after I painted it, they said it was the wrong shade and fined me. "I'm so tired of fighting." "Don't give up," I told her. "If you have written approval, they can't enforce a fine. Get a lawyer if you need to, but don't let them bully you into repainting when you did everything right." She thanked me with tears in her eyes, and I realized that for a lot of people, dealing with an unreasonable HOA was incredibly stressful and isolating. They felt like they had no power and no recourse. Sharing my story gave them hope that they could fight back and win. As I drove home from the conference, I felt a sense of satisfaction. What had started as a personal annoyance had turned into something bigger. I'd not only solved my own problem but potentially helped others facing similar situations. When I got home, I found a letter in my mailbox from the HOA. For a split second, old anxiety flared up. Then I remembered that Sharon was gone and Jennifer was president now. I opened it to find a thank you note. "Dear Oliver, The board wanted to express our gratitude for your representation of Desert Vista at the statewide HOA conference. We've received several calls from the organizers praising your presentation and the positive example our community has set for HOA reform. Your willingness to share our story is helping other communities avoid the problems we faced. Thank you for your continued engagement and advocacy. Best regards, Jennifer Palmer, HOA President. I put the letter on my refrigerator, held up by a magnet. It was a far cry from the violation notices I'd received from Sharon less than a year ago. That evening, I turned on my heater and sat outside with a book. The temperature was perfect for it, cool enough to need the warmth but not so cold that it was uncomfortable. As I sat there reading, I heard footsteps and looked up to see Frank walking over with 2 beers. "Thought you might want some company," he said, handing me one of the bottles. "Always," I said, gesturing to the empty chair. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, just enjoying the evening. Finally, Frank spoke up. "You know, I've been thinking about the whole situation with Sharon," he said, "and I realized something. I was part of the problem." "How do you figure?" I asked. I knew she was difficult. I knew she overstepped her authority sometimes, but I never said anything because it wasn't affecting me directly. When she went after you about the heater, I should have spoken up right away. Instead, I waited until after you'd already gone through the whole ordeal. "Frank, you did speak up," I said. "You supported me at the board meeting. You told me about the Wilkins having a heater. That helped." "But I should have done more sooner," Frank insisted. "We all should have." If more people had challenged Sharon earlier, maybe she wouldn't have felt so emboldened to steal from us. He had a point. "Maybe," I said, "but you can't change the past. The important thing is that everyone learned from it. The community is more engaged now. People are paying attention." "That's true," Frank acknowledged. "I go to every board meeting now. I read every financial report. I never did that before." "And that's what matters," I said. "Sharon's gone, the money's being recovered, and the community is better than ever. That's a win." Frank raised his beer. "To standing up for what's right, even when it's just about a patio heater." I clinked my bottle against his. "To patio heaters and the unexpected ways they change our lives." We both laughed at the absurdity of it all. Who could have predicted that such a simple thing would lead to exposing fraud, criminal charges, and community reform? As fall turned to winter, I used my heater more and more frequently. Every time I turned it on, I thought about the journey it had taken me on. From Sharon's initial confrontation to Officer Martinez's response, from the violation notices to the board meeting, from the financial investigation to Sharon's conviction, it had been a wild ride. In December, the community had a holiday party at the community center. There was hot chocolate, cookies, and a visit from Santa for the kids. And of course, there were propane heaters keeping the outdoor area warm for adults who wanted to escape the chaos inside. I was standing by one of the heaters when a young couple approached me. They just moved into the neighborhood a few weeks earlier. "Are you Oliver Carlson?" the woman asked. "I am," I said, wondering what this was about. "We heard about what you did with the HOA," the man said. "Our realtor actually told us about it when we were considering buying here. She said Desert Vista had gone through a major reform and was now one of the best-run HOA communities in Scottsdale." "That's good to hear," I said, surprised that it had become a selling point for the neighborhood. "We were nervous about buying in an HOA community," the woman explained. We'd heard so many horror stories, but knowing that homeowners here actually have a voice and that the board is accountable made us feel better about it. "The board is great now," I assured them. "Jennifer and the rest of them actually care about making this a good place to live, not just enforcing petty rules." We chatted for a while longer, and they asked me questions about the neighborhood and what it was like living there. It felt good to be able to tell them honestly that it was a great place to live. As the evening wound down and people started heading home, Jennifer found me by the heater. "Another successful community event," she said, "and all made possible by heaters like yours." "I never thought a patio heater would become such an important part of community life," I said with a laugh. "It's not about the heater," Jennifer said. "It's about what it represents, standing up for yourself, asking questions, not accepting unfair treatment. That's what really changed this community." She was right, of course. The heater was just a catalyst. The real change had come from people deciding they deserved better and being willing to fight for it. As I drove home that night, I passed Sharon's old house. New owners had moved in a few months ago, a nice family with 2 kids. The house looked warm and welcoming, with Christmas lights strung across the front. It was a stark contrast to when Sharon had lived there, when the house had always felt cold and unwelcoming despite its expensive landscaping. I pulled into my own driveway and looked at my house. It wasn't the biggest or fanciest house in the neighborhood, but it was mine. And I could use my propane heater whenever I wanted without fear of harassment or bogus fines. It seemed like such a small thing, but it represented something much bigger. The freedom to live in your own home without unreasonable interference. The right to question authority when it oversteps. The importance of community members holding their leaders accountable. Inside, I made myself dinner and settled in for the evening. My phone buzzed with a message from Officer Martinez. "Hey, just wanted to let you know I gave a presentation to my department about the HOA fraud case. It's going to be used as a training example. Thanks for asking those questions that started the investigation. Happy holidays," I replied with my thanks and holiday wishes. It was surreal to think that my dispute over a patio heater had led to police training materials about financial fraud investigations. But that was the nature of standing up for yourself. You never knew where it might lead. Sometimes it just resolved your immediate problem. Other times, it uncovered deeper issues and created positive change that rippled out far beyond your initial concern. As winter settled in and the year came to a close, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. If someone had told me a year ago that buying a patio heater would lead to all of this, I never would have believed them. But life is strange that way. Small decisions and small actions can have unexpectedly large consequences. The propane heater sat on my patio, ready for use whenever I needed it. It had become more than just a heater. It was a reminder that sometimes the smallest battles are worth fighting, that standing up for yourself matters, and that one person asking reasonable questions can make a real difference. I made myself a cup of coffee and stepped outside onto my patio. The evening was cool and clear, perfect weather for using the heater. I turned it on and felt the familiar warmth spread across my patio. As I sat down with my coffee, I looked up at the stars and smiled. This was exactly what I'd wanted all along. Just a peaceful evening on my own patio, warmed by my propane heater, living in a community that functioned the way it should. It had taken a fight to get here, but it was worth it. And if another HOA Karen ever tried to tell me I couldn't use my heater again, well, I knew exactly what to do. I had my documentation, my attorney's number, and most importantly, I had the knowledge that standing up for yourself works. But somehow, I didn't think that would be a problem anymore. Desert Vista had learned its lesson. We all had.